Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our first ever Good Brick nomination workshop. My name is Jim Parsons. I am Programs Director for Preservation Houston, and really happy that you're interested in learning more about the process of preparing and submitting a nomination for our annual Good Brick Awards. Just as a lead in to the purpose of tonight's program, this is really to cover, excuse me, some of the basics of preparing a Good Break nomination and the things that you might want to include as you work through that process. This might be the first time that you have prepared a Good Break nomination. Maybe you've done it before, but either way, we just thought it would be helpful to give a few tips and tricks and maybe some insight into what the awards jury is looking for. I have to open this with a disclaimer. The Good Brick Award selection process is totally independent of Preservation Houston staff. We don't have any influence over what gets chosen for an award or what doesn't get chosen for an award. The jury does its own thing, and we are happy to stay out of it. So I'm going to talk through the nomination process tonight. I'm going to let you know about some of the things that we have seen be successful in the past. But I just want to say at the outset, following these guidelines does not guarantee that you will or will not receive a Good Brick Award. So all we can do is try to help you prepare the strongest nomination possible and equip you to do that. And that is the point of what we're going to talk about this evening. So I want to start with a little bit of background on the Good Brick Awards themselves. Some of you may not be familiar with the awards program. It started back in 1978, along with Preservation Houston. When the organization was founded, the Good Brick Awards were one of the first initiatives that we launched because we thought that it was important to honor exceptional preservation projects in and around Houston, not only to highlight the work that people had done in making those projects happen, but also as a way to encourage other people to take on similar projects. Our first Good Bricks were presented in 1979, and as far as we can tell, this is the picture from that first presentation ceremony or somewhere thereabouts. This was taken at the Hogg building downtown, which is now the Hogg Palace Lofts. And the first awards in 1979 honored four projects. One of them was the restoration of the Hogg building, which you see on the left side of your screen there, the restoration of Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, the restoration and adaptive reuse of the Kirby Mansion in Midtown, and the restoration of the old Cotton Exchange near Market Square. Since then, we have had ups and downs in the program. There have been years when we presented one good brick, and there have been years when we presented no good bricks. I'm happy to say it's been a long time since we had none. We have given 425 good bricks over the last 46 years. And of course, we add to that number every year. And I will say the program has just gotten better and better and more robust as the years have gone by, which shows not only the quality of the nominations that are coming in, but the quality and the breadth of preservation projects that are happening in and around Houston. The awards are called the Good Bricks because they were meant to recognize good preservation projects. When the program started, there was a companion awards program called the Bad Bricks. They were given out to people and organizations that had demolished significant buildings. And some of the earliest bad bricks went to the groups that demolished our downtown movie palaces, for example, for parking lots. One of the early bad bricks went to Incarnate Word Academy downtown for tearing down one of its Victorian buildings designed by the famous Galveston architect Nicholas Clayton. The story goes that the nuns at Incarnate Word were not happy about being called out, and so they went to one of Preservation Houston's founders, Bart Truxillo, who some of you may know. Bart was a good Catholic kid, and the sisters apparently intimidated him enough that we ended up dropping the bad bricks early on. So the nuns may have won that round, but the good bricks endured. And the awards themselves are historic bricks. The awards are often mistakenly called the gold bricks, and I'm sorry to tell you that they are not actually gold bricks, but they are historic bricks from in and around Houston, and they have become a symbol of preservation excellence in the city. So let's talk for just a moment about what is and what is not eligible for a Good Brick Award. The first thing to keep in mind is the Good Bricks are a preservation award. They recognize projects in the spirit of preservation. Now, that can include building restorations, remodels, and reuses, new construction that fits into a historic context. So, for example, in addition to a historic building, or even potentially a new building in a historic neighborhood that contributes to it. They also offer recognition for craftspeople who enhance our historic fabric, project planning, preservation-related programs or activities, publications, and outstanding service or leadership in preservation. And when I say publications, I mean not only books, also magazines, journals, videos, documentaries, websites, anything like that. I mentioned all of those to give you an idea of the scope of the awards, but do keep in mind that we don't have award categories. So we don't give good bricks specifically for residential projects and for documentary projects and that kind of thing. So you do not need to nominate for a specific category. And along that same line, we don't offer a set number of awards in any given year. So every project is judged on its own merits. Nominations are not judged against each other. So don't think to yourself, oh, I bet there are going to be a lot of residential projects nominated this year, so I won't have a chance. That's just not the way it works. If your project rises to the top, no matter what it is, then it can be considered. Projects that are nominated for a Good Brick Award must have been completed in the 5 years leading up to the nomination year. So it's not the year that the award is presented, it's this year, the year that the nominations go in. So this year, that's a period from 2021 to 2025. Projects must be complete or at least substantially complete enough to be evaluated by the Good Brick jury. So if 95% of your work is done, if you're just finishing up some odds and ends, that's one thing. But if the project is halfway done or hasn't even gotten off the ground yet, it's best to hold your nomination until a future year. And we just say that because there are a ton of worthy projects out there, but at the end of the day, the Good Brick jury sees your nomination and you want them to be able to see what you have actually done. So if a project is incomplete, they're not going to be able to evaluate its effectiveness. Projects must be located within Harris County. That applies to building and physical projects. If you are nominating a publication, a film, a person, something that's less tangible, then the focus of that project or the focus of the person's work must be on Houston or Harris County. And if you're nominating a person, then they must be nominated for work that they did within Harris County. The reason for that is, again, there are plenty of great projects that are happening outside of the county, but there are other award programs that are designed to honor those projects. So there's enough happening in Houston and within Harris County that we really want to keep our focus on that. Through the years, and I'm addressing building projects specifically here because the majority of Good Brick nominations that we see are related to buildings. So through the years, we have seen a good number of nominations that have focused on interior design and decoration. And that can certainly make an impression, and it absolutely can be worthy of recognition, but it is not the focus of these awards. So the important thing to remember is, as I said earlier, the Good Bricks are preservation awards. So if you're nominating, for example, a home restoration, you're going to want to focus in your nomination on telling the story of the restoration itself and talking about the historic elements that you saved and preserved and how you honored the history of the structure. You are not going to want to focus on design and decoration choices unless they are part of the restoration story. For example, we have had projects before where homeowners would take a house back to its historic color scheme. And in that case, it is a design choice that factors into the preservation story of the project. So that can be mentioned. But what we see is sometimes people will nominate and they will really focus on, I redid the kitchens and the bathrooms, and these are the paint colors that I chose. And it's lovely work, but it does not really have to do with the preservation story. So this is just all to help you keep your focus. And also, one thing to mention here, a project that has already received a Good Brick Award in the past can be awarded a second time. That is possible, but you would need to have had substantial work done on the project since the first award was given. So let's say a project won a Good Brick and then 30 years went by and it needed to be re-restored or restored in a different way. That could be worthy of an award. There have been buildings where they've been restored and then a fire has happened and they needed to be re-restored. That could also be worthy of an award. But the first thing to do if you have a project in mind to nominate might be to go check the list of prior award winners, which you can do at preservationhouston.org/awards, or just call or email us and we'll be happy to look it up and tell you, because we would hate to see you nominate a project that's already won an award. So moving on, who can nominate a project for a Good Brick? The easy answer to that is anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. If you think a project is worthy and you are willing to go through and complete the nomination, then that is fantastic. This applies to individuals, it applies to groups. Just keep in mind that in the case of property-based projects, the nominee and the award recipient is always the property owner. So this is an award that celebrates the work that is done by teams, but the actual name on the brick is going to be the name of the property owner. You do have to have permission of the nominee to nominate, which we'll talk about later, and you absolutely can nominate yourself. Self-nomination does not affect your chance of receiving an award at all, so do not let that keep you from filling out your own nomination. Now, just to run through the timeline really quickly, the Good Brick nominations are due at 3 p.m. the Monday after Labor Day each year. So for the 2026 awards, that's going to be Monday, September 8th, 2025. The Good Brick jury will meet later in September to choose the award winners. The winners will be notified shortly after that, and then the awards will be presented during the Cornerstone Dinner at the River Oaks Country Club on Friday, February 27th, 2026. I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to stress it again. The awards jury is independent. So Preservation Houston staff does not serve on the jury. We don't have any say in the award selection process. The jury is made up of former Good Brick winners, architects, designers, and preservation professionals, and community leaders. And we also try to have at least one person from out of town on the jury so that we can get a truly unbiased perspective on projects. Now, you may know someone who is on the Good Brick jury. Please keep in mind that contacting a juror regarding an active nomination, whether it is yours or somebody else's, will result in that nomination being pulled from consideration for the current award cycle. So it is best just to keep your conversations about active nominations in check until after the jury has met, because we do not want to see nominations end up being pulled. So we've gone through the basics, moving on to the elements of a nomination. We moved to an all online nomination form last year. This was partly a result of COVID and partly just because of the way that the world is going. We used to require nominations to be printed in a binder and submitted in physical form. We don't do that anymore. You fill out the awards online. We've tried to make the nomination form as easy as possible. And it's really simple when you get started. It just walks you through step by step and says, now let's talk about this. Now enter this. And so if you have any feedback, if you have a question or a problem with the form, just give us a shout and we will be happy to help you out and to walk you through. So you start by visiting preservationhouston.org/awards, and then you click through to begin a nomination. You do not have to complete the entire nomination form in one sitting. As long as you are using the same web browser and as long as you are not using incognito or private mode, then the system will automatically save your progress for up to 14 days. So you can start the nomination form, you can close it out, you can come back and you can pick up right where you left off. So don't feel like you have to do this all at once. Now you're going to need these things when you sit down to prepare your nomination. We're going to run through them in detail in a moment, but I wanted to go ahead and lay them out for you now. Obviously, you'll need basic project information. That is names, addresses, dates, things like that. You will need a project summary statement of 500 words or fewer. We'll talk about that in a moment. Image sheets and high resolution digital files. We're going to spend the most time on that tonight because that's the part that I think is the least self-explanatory. If you are nominating a published work, you will need to provide excerpts from the work or copies of that published work, and we'll talk more about that in a moment as well. Permission to nominate, which I mentioned earlier, that is the nominee's permission, and then there is a $150 administrative fee. We're not picky about who pays that fee, but the fee does need to be paid in order for the nomination to progress. So all of those elements are required to have a complete nomination that is forwarded onto the jury. And so having gone through that, we'll dive in one by one and we'll talk about each one of these. Starting with the basic project information, this, like I said, is things like names and dates and addresses. So if you're nominating a building, you need to know the property owner's name, the address of the building, the key people and the group responsible for the project. It's helpful to know architects and contractors and that kind of thing. It's not absolutely necessary, but it does help to go ahead and gather all that information before you start. The address, obviously, if it's a physical location, we're going to want to know where the project is, the year of completion, and the year that the project started. I mentioned the project must have been completed between 2021 and 2025 this year, but it could have started 15 years ago if it's just a really long-term project. So don't let the start date deter you. It's the finish date that matters here. And it's also helpful to have the names of other people who worked on the project. Really, the more names that you can give us, the better. And that's because, like I said earlier, we like to recognize project teams. So architects, craftspeople, contractors, foundation people, roofing people, researchers, photographers, kind of anybody who had a hand in the project. There's a place on the nomination form to send that. And if you want to take the time to collect it later, you can send it to us later as well. But we do like to have that. One quick note here: as you work through the nomination form, you will have the option to designate an alternate contact person for your nomination. If you do that, then we will make them the primary contact for questions and communication regarding your nomination. So, for example, if you have a personal assistant or somebody who you really want to pick this up, or somebody else, if you're an architect, let's say, and you have somebody else in your office who should be the person who's really dealing with this day to day, that's your chance to designate that person. The project summary statement is where you let the jury know why your project deserves a Good Brick Award. So this is an important part of the nomination. You use the summary statement to tell a story about the project. You tell how it came about, what were some of the challenges that were faced, how did it come out, what impact did it have. In the nomination form, we do offer some guidelines to help you structure your summary statement, and basically they're just prompts to give you sort of questions and key talking points to think about and help you provide some context about the project. So be sure and take a look at those as you're working through the nomination form, because they might be helpful as you structure this. There is a 500-word limit on this project summary statement, so you're going to want to be concise, and you can fit a lot in 500 words, so just think about your language. You can format the statement however you wish. You can break it into sections. You can use bullets, whatever you think is going to best help you tell the story that you're trying to tell. Now, on that 500-word limit, if you turn in something that's more than 500 words, we'll work with you and give you a chance to edit it down. But at the end of the day, when the nominations are forwarded on to the jury, if you're still at 500 plus words, we're going to cut it off at 500 words. So just remember to use your word counter in Microsoft Word or Google Docs or wherever you're composing. That'll be your friend. The summary statement is your chance to advocate for your project. It's really the opportunity to help the jury understand not only what was done, but why it mattered and why it deserves a Good Brick Award. So be sure and use this wisely. And there is a pro tip that I have to offer here. The project summary is where you're going to tell the overall story of your project, but it is not the only chance that you will have to discuss the project with the jury. You can also do that through image captions, and we will talk more about that when we move into our section on image sheets, which is happening now. Image sheets are the next component here. They will apply to almost every project that's nominated for a good brick. There are a few types of projects that I can think of that would not have images, but most everyone will. Images are really valuable because while the project summary gives an overview of your project, images really help to bring the work to life for the awards jury. And you have to think about, when you're preparing a nomination, the jurors, you have to assume that they're not going to have any knowledge of your project at all, right? So they're going to read your 500 words that you wrote about. How did we start? What challenges did we face? What impact did this have? But then the photos, the images that you submit are really their chance to see what you've done. And you know the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So think of this as your chance to really do some heavy duty storytelling. So, what kind of images does the jury look for? It's usually photos that help to tell the story of a project. Not always. We'll get to that in a second. So don't be constrained by photos, but photos are usually the easiest way to do this. So for building projects specifically, you are going to want to use photographs that document important work and that show definite progress on your project. It really helps the jury to be able to see comparable photos from three phases of work: before you started, during the project, and after the project. As I said, jurors probably won't be familiar with what you did, so you should make it easy for the jurors to understand what they are looking at. If you show a photo of a room or a photo of an elevation of a house or building before restoration, it is super helpful to include a picture of that same room or that same elevation from either the same or approximately the same angle as your during and after shots. Just think about this. If you were showing a living room pointed toward the fireplace as your before, and then for your after, you turned around and pointed toward the door, the jury's first thought is going to be, did they take out the fireplace? They're not going to have any way to know that the photographer has turned their back on the image. So it's just good to kind of try to keep the same perspective as much as you can. I mentioned the during photos. Photos from that phase are very important. You might show, for example, flooring that was taken up to reveal original hardwoods, or 100 years of layers of paint being stripped off of woodwork, or walls being opened up to replace mechanical systems, or a window being rebuilt. Any of that can really help the jury understand the scope of work that went into a project. And if you can show people working on the project, the jury tends to really like that. You don't want the people to necessarily get in the way of what you're showing, but if you're talking about like the work that a window crafts person did on carefully rebuilding your windows, it's always nice to have a picture of the person actually doing that work if you have it. So I want to show you some examples of what this looks like in practice. These are image sheets from some prior year's Good Brick nominations. I don't want you to focus on the design of these because the design varies a good bit, and some people go to pretty good lengths to lay theirs out. Some people are pretty bare bones. The graphic design doesn't matter at the end of the day. Clarity and showing the right images is what's important here. So we're starting with a set of photos from the restoration of one of the buildings at Rice University. This is a historic photo of this classroom that was part of the restoration. Then they had photos of the before restoration on the left there, and during restoration on the right. You can see a drop ceiling has been removed to reveal the original barrel vaulted ceiling. And then here's the after shot of that same space. And so you can see how they showed a clear progression of what it looked like back in 1912, what it looked like after years of renovations, getting back to the original and then the restored version. Now, the project team here was lucky enough to have a historic photo to start from. You don't have to have that. You can just say, here's what this room looked like when I bought the property, and here's what it looked like when we tore all the walls out, and here's what it looked like after we revealed all this beautiful stuff. But I wanted to show you this because this is a really nice progression of similar images. Now, these sheets are from a nomination for a house restoration in the first ward, and they detail work that was done on the front porch. These photos I'm showing you because they help the jury to understand the extent of the damage that water and termites had done to the house and the amount of work that went into restoring the porch to its original appearance. So on the left there, you can see before pictures showing the porch looks like on the verge of collapse. On the right, they've taken out all that rotted wood and they've shored the porch up. And then at the bottom there, you can see how they've repointed the brick and had to rebuild the front steps. So again, this just kind of shows the jury the steps and the care and the amount of work that went into this process. These are some images from the restoration of St. Mark's Methodist Church in Woodland Heights after the church suffered a fire. And this is a series of images over 3 pages from their nomination. But I wanted to show you this series because it details stabilization and reconstruction of one of the burned out parts of the church. So you can see they went from before on the left, stabilization, demolition. They had a little inset there, a detail photo that talks about how they were matching the original stonework, and then showing reconstruction. So they're showing you different phases of the project. They very clearly labeled these so that the jury can understand what they're looking at here. And notice, even though these pictures are not taken from exactly the same angle, they are close enough to where the jury can tell that they're looking at the same wing of the church as they move from photo to photo. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Sometimes you can help the jurors a little bit better to understand that they are looking at the same thing. These are image sheets from a home in Southside Place, and the nominator here used a red dot to identify a common spot in these pictures because what they were showing you is how the house gained a pretty big rear addition. So starting on that upper left photo, you can see that they've marked the back door of the original house with a red dot. Then as they took off a later back deck at the bottom left photo, you can see that red dot stays. And then the photo on the right that shows the finished house with the addition, there's that red dot again so that you can realize you're looking at the same door in all 3 photos. This is the same house, but an interior view, kind of showing how the living room was extended into that addition. And they have used a red dot to mark the little phone nook on the staircase. So again, it just gives you an anchor point as you're looking, and it helps the jury understand, yeah, this is what we're really seeing. Now, You don't have to do this. This is a helpful one in a project that saw a good bit of change. Doesn't have to be a dot. It could be an arrow. It could be an X, whatever it is. But this is just to give you an idea of something that you might want to do. You can also use images in your image sheets to zoom in on details of a project. You saw that at St. Mark's a minute ago where they used a photo to show how they were matching up their stonework. These are a couple of image sheets from the restoration of Apollo Mission Control at the Johnson Space Center. The photos on the left deal with recreating the pattern of holes that were punched in a replica acoustical tile that went into one of the ceilings there. And then on the right, you can see how they were stripping back paint to reveal original paint colors on a door on the left, and then some of the original stenciling on that column on the right. So again, this isn't just about visual polish. These are images that show the deep research and attention to original detail in this project, which really helps to tell the jury about the work and the care that went into this project. And I want to add, it never hurts to have some really dramatic before and after pictures. The jury likes those. The audience at the award ceremony likes those. So I'm not saying you need to go out of your way to get them, but if you have them, doesn't hurt to put them in. The sheet on the left shows the before and after of a living room of a home in the Fifth Ward that had been in really bad shape. You can see the before on the bottom and the after at the top. And then on the right, we have two image sheets from a home restoration in Westmoreland showing you a porch where the columns are doing really weird things and the foundation was gone, and then the after same view of that porch. So these are the photos that make the jury say, wow, and that's kind of what you want the jury to say, right? Now, the images that are included on the image sheets, all these images that I've showed you so far are photos. But as I said a few minutes ago, the images that you include do not have to be photography. You can also include maps, you can put in drawings, you can do diagrams, you can do plans, you can do elevations. Just keep in mind that the purpose is to help the jury to better understand the project that you are nominating. So you're going to want to clearly explain what you're showing. You're going to want each of the images that you include to tell a story. And if you're including floor plans, you're going to want to make sure that they understand why you're including the floor plans and what the floor plans are showing you. I'm showing you an example here from a project in Montrose, just because this is a bare bones way to present floor plans, but it did help the jury understand the work that was done. What happened here was this was a upstairs downstairs duplex that was converted into a single family home. So on this page, they have showed you what the floor plan was of the original duplex. And then on the next page here, they've shown you what the floor plan was after the duplex was converted to a single family home. So it's easy for the jury to flip back and forth and say, okay, I understand. I've looked at the photos. I understand this wall moved. These two rooms were combined, you know, whatever it is. You don't have to do floor plans, but if you do, it can be helpful. You can also annotate and color code your plans to explain the history or evolution of a building. Again, this is not necessary. Don't feel like you have to do it, but I just wanted to show you an example of how it can help. This was a home in Midtown that was converted into a law office, and the architects were careful to really treat the original parts of the house kind of more carefully than they did later additions. And I don't want to say they did anything bad with later editions, but they were really making a kind of trying to make a distinction between the oldest parts of the house and the parts that might have been added on and might have been reconfigured. So in the floor plan there, they've color coded the different wings of the house and additions to the house. And at the top, they've included pages from Sanborn fire insurance maps that just kind of show how the footprint of the house changed over the years. So you may not have this, you don't have to do it, but if it's helpful to your project, it can be something that you might want to include. Now, if you're nominating a project that is not a building, images will also help you to tell the story. It could be photos of craftspeople at work or researchers looking up information for a documentary or people at an event. These are a couple of images from the Emancipation Park Conservancy's nomination for community engagement, including a set of commemorative pylons in the park. So they gave us a picture of a group of community members working on a mosaic installation, and then they gave us a picture of the finished pylon, and you can see that same mosaic is in place on the pylon now. So this really helps the jury again understand different people had a hand in this. This is what it looks like as the finished product. Here is an image sheet from a different kind of project. This is from the nomination for the Southampton Neighborhood Centennial, and the organizers used this image sheet to highlight some of the things that they did to draw attention to their celebration. So they're showing you pictures of merch, they're showing you pictures of signs and flags that they put around the neighborhood. So like I said, there's different ways to tell the story. There are a lot of different images that you can use. So, be creative with this and really think about what best demonstrates to the jury what you're trying to tell them. You can include a maximum of 30 images in your nomination. And just keep in mind, every photo, every drawing, every map, every plan, every whatever counts as one image. So when you go through and count everything you've put in, it should total up to no more than 30. You will lay your pages out on the equivalent of 8.5 by 11 pages. Now that can be done on the computer. That can be done in InDesign or Microsoft Word or something else. You can also go old school. You could actually glue photos to a page and you could paste in captions or write in captions if you want to. Whatever works. We don't want your level of technical proficiency to hold you back here. And we have had it done every which way. You can put up to 3 images on one page. So a page could contain one image, it could contain two, it could contain three. You can lay them out however you want, but the key is to make sure that each image is large enough so that the jury can see what you're trying to show them. So using tiny images, using collages, using overlays, that can, in some cases, do you more harm than good. Remember, I told you earlier, your project summary is not the only place where you can discuss your project. You can fill in details on your image sheets as well, because each image that you submit can have a caption of up to 20 words where you can describe further details and give a little bit more information about the project. These can be super simple. These can be beautiful little 20-word poems. However you want to do it, it's really up to you. But just think about this. 30 captions of 20 words each gives you 600 more words total that you can use to communicate with the jury. Now, the captions do have to do with the images that they are near, but they can give little nuggets of information or additional context or whatever. So you're gaining more than a full typed page. You're getting more than you got in your summary statement. So use this as your bonus storytelling space and think about how you're going to divide information between your summary statement, kind of your opening argument, and then the image captions that carry the jury through what you're describing to them. Each photo should have a credit. You need to tell us where it came from, who took the picture, where the image came from. If it came from a library or a magazine or whatever. And you do need to have the rights to use and reproduce the photos that you send. So please do not just go pulling images off the internet if you cannot secure reproduction rights. And again, if you need help with that, we're happy to help. Just, call or email and we can guide you through that process. That brings me to one more thing. You do not have to have photos that were taken by a professional photographer. The thing to remember here is just the photos need to be high quality and clear enough that they can explain the project well. So you're going to want to make sure you have decent lighting. You're not showing a room in darkness where you can't see anything. You want to make sure that things are in focus. The good news is every day everybody gets better at taking pictures because we all have fantastic cameras in our pockets thanks to our smartphones. So just remember, use the camera that you have with you. If you don't have a professional photographer coming in, the best thing to do is just take as many pictures as possible. Get your contractor and architect to take pictures too, because you never know what you're going to come up with. You will put your image sheets together into a single PDF file. So if you're laying everything out electronically, this is easy to just export it to a PDF. If you do it physically, just get your sheets scanned into a single PDF. You're going to submit that single PDF along with your nomination. Now, you may be able to upload it straight from the nomination form, but there is a size limitation on the upload there. So more likely than not, you're going to have to send your PDF separately, and you can do that by a file transfer service like Dropbox or WeTransfer. If you've never used one of those services, do not worry about that. Just send me an email, and I will be happy to send you a link where you can upload your image sheets, and it is super easy to do. So, again, don't let technology scare you. You're also going to need to send us, and this is important, you're going to need to send us a high resolution digital version of every image that you include in your image sheets. So if you include 30 images, you're going to need to send 30 separate image files. That is going to be a 300 DPI JPEG for images, a high-res PDF for plans and drawings. If we do not get these high-res digital versions of every image, your nomination will not be complete. Again, I'm happy to help you. If you need help sourcing these or putting them together or formatting, or if you have questions about, is this high enough resolution, just ask. I would much rather answer that question beforehand than have you end up short on the other end of the nomination. So just to recap here, and I know I've spent a long time on this, but like I said, this is the part that trips people up sometimes, and this is the part that's not self-explanatory. Good nomination images show your work, they tell your story, and they help the jury to see the difference that your project made because they are clear, they're high quality, they're well presented, and they're well captioned. So this can really be where you win the jury over. So make sure you use these images to your benefit. Now, moving back to kind of the basic checklist here, if you're nominating a published work, whether that is an article, a book, a video, whatever, you're going to need to provide a sample of that work for the jury. And what that looks like can vary depending on the item that you're nominating. So if you are nominating a book, you can send digital versions of excerpts from that book. That might include the cover image, the table of contents, and maybe a sample chapter that gives the jury an idea of the scope and the quality of the book. We have also had people submit a PDF of the entire book, and that's also fine. But if you don't have access to that, if you can't do that, you can just send some bits and pieces. The goal, again, is to let the jury know that this project is high quality. The table of contents is good because it shows them what was included in the book. You can give a sample of the writing, a sample of the photography, whatever works for you. If you're nominating an article, or a journal entry, it should be pretty easy to send a PDF of the whole article. For a video project, the best thing is to submit a digital version for the jury to review. If it's available online, that could be as easy as saying, here is a YouTube link where you can watch this video that I'm nominating. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. For these excerpts, again, you will probably send those in unless it's linked somewhere online. You'll send them in using a file transfer service. And again, if you're not familiar with that, just let me know and I'm happy to help you out. One final note here, if you're submitting a published work, you are going to want to have permission of the author, but you're also going to want to make sure that the publisher is okay with you submitting this work for a nomination. It's hard to think of a world where a publisher would say, no, don't nominate this work for an award. But, even as just a courtesy to let the publisher know or to have the author let the publisher know, it just never hurts. Which brings me to our next to the last important thing. Permission. So you're going to want to have the nominee's permission to submit your nomination. Unfortunately, Good Brick nominations cannot be a surprise. The permission here covers a couple of things. So first of all, it's permission to submit the nomination of a project. Secondly, it's permission to use images of the project as part of the nomination in the awards presentation and in any publicity and marketing that is connected with the Good Brick Awards. So again, if you're nominating somebody's home, you just want them to be on board with having pictures of their house out in the world. You cannot submit a Good Brick nomination without this permission. So as I said, it can't be a total surprise to somebody, but this is also not the kind of thing you want to catch somebody off guard with. So if you're nominating your own project, you're obviously just giving your own permission, and that's totally fine as well. What this looks like in the actual nomination form, there is a screen that just asks you to confirm that you have secured permission. How you actually get that permission is up to you. You can email somebody, you can call them, you can get them to sign something. We're not going to ask for a signature or anything like that. We're just going to ask you on the honor system and on your good word to certify that you have that permission to submit the nomination. I mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to touch on it again in closing. There is a $150 administrative fee for each nomination. The simplest way to pay that is by credit card as part of your nomination form, but we can work with you if another method is easier. So just let us know. So that kind of gets us where we need to be. A couple of things in closing. Remember what I said at the beginning. Good bricks honor preservation work that matters. Your goal in preparing a nomination is to help the jury understand why your project matters and how it contributes to Houston's historic fabric or the historic fabric of Harris County. If a project preserved history, if it restored integrity, if it reconnected a place with its past, we want to see it. If this is a person who is out there doing great work, we want to know about them. The Good Brick is our way of celebrating the people who do all of this work, and we hope your nomination is going to help us do just that. So go ahead and get started. You do not want to wait until September 7th to start preparing all this because it can take some time. It's not rocket science to prepare a nomination, but it's also not the kind of thing you want to do overnight. As I said earlier, don't worry about graphic design. Do not worry about perfect prose. As long as you can set up images and captions on a page, which you can absolutely do in Word or Google Docs or whatever's most comfortable for you, that and a clear and compelling story is what the jury is going to look for. Supplementary information like letters of support and that kind of thing, The jury is not going to see them, so we don't want you to kill yourself to provide them. It is much better to focus on presenting a solid nomination and then letting the project speak for itself. And remember, I've said this all along, but it is absolutely true. We are here to help. We cannot tell you that doing something or not doing something will or will not win you an award. What we can tell you is what the jury usually reacts to and what we've seen work in prior years' nominations. So we're happy to give you some general pointers on pulling your nomination together. Take advantage of that. You'll find information on the process and on the awards at preservationhouston.org/awards. You all have my email address and it's up here on the screen. You can email me, you can call the office. And like I said, we're happy to help you however we can. We want to see as many good nominations as we can come in. So that's everybody's goal here. Now I am going to get to the Q&A. We have some questions. Can somebody nominate more than one project in the same year? And the answer is absolutely. If you want to nominate more than one project, just keep in mind you're going to need to go through the process for each project. Each project is going to take its own nomination form and is going to have its own nomination fee. You want to go through everything that we described and then go through it again, but you could submit as many nominations as you want to in a single year. And we do have people do that. We have architecture firms that work on multiple projects. We have preservation consultants who work on multiple projects, and they submit, and sometimes multiple projects of theirs will win in one year. Another question, can a long-term project be nominated in multiple phases? And that's a little bit trickier because it really depends on the work. And I'll give you an example here. There's a project that I can think of where a little bit of work was done in prior years, but they had done a preservation plan for a larger site. And so the people behind the project went ahead and nominated the project and they said, we've restored this one little component of the project, but we have this preservation plan for doing the larger thing. It's totally fine to submit that nomination, but what ended up happening in that case was the jury said, we want to see this when it's done. We want to see this when we see how the project actually works out. So just keep that in mind. The jury will certainly be impressed that a preservation plan has been done, but not being able to show like a finished project may hurt you. We have had other cases where, if there was let's just say, I'm not thinking of one in particular, but let's just say there's a church that's being restored and it's a project where, maybe they restored their building, they clean the walls, they restore their stonework, they do a new roof and they get a good brick. And then later they come back and as a completely separate project, they restore their stained glass windows. They could get another good brick for that. So the answer can be either yes or no. And it's really, I think that the easy way to think about this is, has substantial enough work been done and completed to warrant a second award? And the answer to that may be yes. We also have a question, and I appreciate this getting right to the point. What's the most effective method for bribing the jury? I think it is to bring the staff cookies. I can't guarantee that those will get to the jury. And like I said, we don't have any sway with the jury, but at least you'll make the staff happy. All joking aside, it does actually bring up something that I didn't think of in my presentation notes. But if you do nominate a project and it does not win in a given year, that doesn't mean it's the end of the road for your project. Sometimes the jury will ask for a project to be resubmitted. That doesn't mean that it automatically happens, but it means that you as the nominator have the option to resubmit, and we can work with you. We can relay messages from the jury. So they might say, we really like the looks of this project, but we couldn't tell how much actual preservation work you did. It focused on bathrooms and kitchens or whatever. So they might ask you to resubmit with a focus on X, Y, and Z, and you can absolutely do that. Again, it doesn't mean that the project is going to win, but at least you have a better idea of what the jury is looking for. And you may actually not win in one year, and you may say, you know what, I need to hold off a year. I need to let this project be a little bit more complete. I know what I did wrong. I need to present it in a different way. So you can absolutely resubmit. So sometimes a no is a no, and sometimes a no is not this year or not with this nomination. And we'll be happy to talk to you about that further. We can certainly let you know what the jury says and if the jury has anything that they want you to know. All right. Well, I don't see anything else coming in. I just want to urge you, like I said, call us, read up on this on the website, email me. We are happy to help with anything. And the goal here is to get some great nominations in, because the better the nominations that we have, the better the awards will be in any given year. So I hope this has been helpful. I really appreciate you sticking with me, and good luck with your nominations. And I hope we'll see some great things to come. So thank you again for your attention, and have a great evening.